So in the insurance business, an effective sales process can be the most vital thing to success. Stay with me because I'm about to show you one of the most proven sales processes in the country. Hi, my name is Jeremy Smith, and over the better part of the last 15 years, I've been an agent, a manager, an owner-operator of an insurance brokerage, and over the last 5 or 6 years, I've been a business coach, traveling the country to help agents and agencies grow their practice. Stay with me because I'm going to help you grow yours. If you've been on YouTube before, then you know the game. Please like and comment, and don't forget to ring the bell. So if you followed through with all of my video series, you know how important I believe a sales process is. I'm going to go through with you today my sales process. And I want to say that I'm not trying to convince you that my sales process is so much better than someone else's. What I do want you to take to heart is that I believe that having a sales process, a documented sales process that you've learned and memorized and do the same thing every day is super, super important. Okay? With that said, the more you follow my sales process with my future videos, probably the easier we're going to connect and I'm going to be able to help you grow your practice. So take with mind what you want, take the good stuff that you might have in your own and make your own, but document it, memorize it, and do it every time. Okay? So let's get into this. The first step of a sales process, and we covered this a couple videos ago, I'll review with you, that's the warm-up. That's something that as soon as we walk into somebody's home, it's that uncomfortable period from when we walk in before we get to the kitchen table. I went over the 3 things that I think you really want to cover in that warm-up period, being a person's career, what their hobbies, and what their family is. The next step was the last video we just put out, which was our fact finder, okay? And the fact finder itself is kind of self-explanatory, but there's a lot of things inside that fact finder that if you for some reason did not watch the role play video, I'm going to strongly urge you to go back and watch it because there's a plethora of little trainings inside that role play video I did with the fact finder. And it's absolutely vital, the how that you conduct that. It's really the difference between success and real success, okay? Step 3 and step 4 are also inside the fact finder part, okay? And let me review those again with you real quick. The evaluation, that's the step that after I completed the fact finder and I'd gone through and I'd asked all the vital questions about their current situation, where I went back through with them again. And I went through and looked to make sure that I got all the information on the med sup and the final expense and the life insurance and the long-term care and the annuities. I want to make sure that my accuracy was right. I want to make sure we didn't forget anything. But the real trick of what I do in the evaluation is that's the point when I'm making the client acknowledge the holes and the problems inside their retirement plan that we're going to have to go back and talk about solutions on. Okay? Step 4 is the turn. That's the very last thing I did in the role play video where I went back onto the front of the fact finder and I showed them the 4 quadrants when it comes to retirement planning. And I talked about what I was concerned a little bit about, what I was more concerned about, what I was even more concerned about. And I ended on my biggest concern with their entire retirement plan, which in essence what I was really doing was I was building a pathway, a seamless pathway to begin to present what it is that I'm going to talk to them about today. Okay? And one thing I want to really point out and make sure that we're on the same page about. Unless you're in that rare scenario where you've got a client that they're into it and they just want to keep on going, I want to make a quick little side note point that typically when I'm going to be able to sell multiple products to a client, it's probably going to require multiple appointments. Okay, so I've went through my entire process up to now. And I'm about to get to the point where I'm going to do my product presentation and my close, okay? The point I want to make to you is most of the times, I'm not going to present more than one product in one appointment, okay? All people, and especially older people, have a certain attention span level, okay? You get to 45 minutes, an hour, much past that, their attention span is just about done. So I'm never going to probably recommend you going through and doing 3 or 4 different topics and 3 or 4 different presentations. Make that appointment before you leave to come back for appointment number 2. And that's when you'll normally work on problem number 2, presentation number 2. And maybe there's a 3rd and a 4th, depending on the scenario. So appointment number 1 I'm going to do a warm-up, a fact finder, evaluation, a turn. I'm going to give a great product presentation, and then a close. Those are the first 6 steps of my sales process, okay? Steps 5 and step 6, we're going to put those on pause here for a couple videos. We will get here very soon to where I start teaching you actual product presentations for everything that your license can sell, okay? Today I want to stay focused on the actual sales process. So my sales process is a 10-step sales process, and you will just plug and play your actual product presentations into that sales process. Make sense? So listen, if you've been in any sales in the world, especially insurance sales, you probably have heard the statistics that only about 10%, if you're lucky, are lay-down sales where you give a great product presentation, ask for the sale, and you're 10 minutes later signing paperwork. And just sales in general, especially insurance, over 85% of all of the sales that you'll ever make in your career, they happen after the second, third, fourth, or even fifth ask. So it's great to have a game plan on how to get to the presentation part and how to close down a sale, but it's crazy if you don't have a game plan of what happens when somebody says no, or what happens when somebody says, I want to think about it. So that's what I want to talk about now. I want to talk about steps 7, 8, 9, and 10. What do you do on the majority of your appointments when they don't just say, give me a pen, okay? The thing that a lot of people miss when they get a no, or they get a let me think about it, or any of the objections you might ever hear, is a lot of times people just keep talking and they're winging it almost always at this point. They just keep trying to resell and they resell. Well, there's a couple really important, in my opinion, key steps that have to happen before you can start reselling or representing or taking another stab at making this sale. The first one is empathy or empathize. The second one is isolate the objections. And then we can overcome those objections and finally represent and reclose. Let me break these down for you a little bit, okay? So the first one's empathize, or empathy, okay? This is the step where metaphorically you've got to get on the same side of the table with them. You have to make them understand that you're a consumer too. You have to make them understand that just like them, you've been conditioned your entire life to say no to a salesperson, okay? Give them a story. Give them an example. I'll give you one that I use all the time. You can use it or use your own. But this is a true story. Just a few months ago, I was at a car dealership because I needed to buy a new truck. Okay? I had bought a camper. My old one wouldn't pull it. I needed to buy a new truck. And the first thing I did when I got to the car lot and the car salesperson come running at me was I said, I'm just looking. Okay? We're all conditioned to be reluctant to say yes to a salesperson. Okay? I need you as my customer to understand that I'm just like you. I get it. I totally get it. I told you in the very beginning of our meeting that I am not a pushy salesperson. I don't ever want to be perceived as a pushy salesperson. Okay? What I also need you to understand, though, is I walk a real fine line from keeping that promise when I'm in a situation where I know I've got a recommendation for somebody that's the right recommendation, that betters their life. It's a fine line I walk of not being a pushy salesperson, but making sure that I'm getting through to them everything they need to know in order for them to make the right educated decision. So, I've got a little exercise, if you'll allow me to, that I'd like to do that I think will help both of us come to the conclusion of whether or not this is the right decision for you or not. Okay? That last little bit, I got permission to continue talking, which, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, is vital for you to continue on, okay? I've got that permission now. So now let's go to that next step, which is to isolate the objection, okay? Too many times people, when they're winging it, they're trying to overcome objections. Most of the time, they're overcoming the wrong objections, which does them no good at all, okay? I want to give you just a little bit of some verbiage, because I think the verbiage is everything at this point, that I use that allows me to continue down the path to eventually get to representing my recommendation, okay? I normally tell them that there's really only, in my experience, there's only about 4 reasons why someone doesn't take the recommendations when I put them out in front of them, okay? Number one, that they don't think it makes financial sense for them or their family. Okay? Well, John Q. customer, I'm going to assume that's probably not it. For example, if I was selling you a Medicare supplement, I'm showing you the exact same product you had before, just cheaper. Okay? Give an example as to why that's probably not it. You're going to see that the first three things that I say here, I'm almost insinuating that that's one of the reasons, but that's probably not it, right? I want to get feedback. I want to at least get a head nod back that that's not the reason. The number two reason is that they're not comfortable with the company, okay? I'm going to assume that that's probably not the reason in this scenario, being how the product comes from a company that's an A+ rated carrier, sell the company, that you really couldn't find a stronger company than the one I'm recommending to. So I'm going to assume that's not it. The number three thing is they're not comfortable with me, okay? And listen, what I would say to them is if that is the reason, it's okay for you to tell me. Most likely, we've only known each other for an hour, okay, of our entire lives. My credibility, our trust level, there's no way it could be to the roof yet. If that's the reason, if I'm the problem, I can live with that. You just got to tell me. If you say it like that, I will tell you that 98 times out of 100, they will not shake their head and say, yes, that's you, okay? If they do, you might as well stop talking and go home anyway, because for whatever reason, you guys just didn't click, okay? But almost always, they'll never say that to you, that you're the problem. So if it's not those three, normally the one reason why people don't take my recommendations, it's because I haven't done a good enough job explaining the recommendation, okay? And like I said just a few minutes ago, I am not going to be a pushy salesperson, but what I can't live with is I can't live with knowing that I've got a product that will better your life and you didn't take it because I didn't do a good job explaining it. I'll share with you another little story. You're gonna notice as I go through all of these things that I'm big on stories. It's just like being an attorney, okay, in a legal courtroom. The stories is what sells the points, okay? So get some stories. Use mine if you have to, but get some stories. The story I normally use to sell this one, which again is a true story, was early back in my career in 2007, 2008, I met one of my favorite clients of all time. Her name was Thelma Rounds, okay? And I was presenting an annuity to her. She had about $100,000 to her name, okay? Thelma's now passed, so it's okay that I say this. But we talked about taking that money and putting it into an annuity, getting it safeguarded from the stock market, okay? Well, I made the same claim to her that I was not going to be pushy. After I was done presenting it, I think she understood it for the most part. I think it was a little fuzzy in her head, but she said, I just want to think about it for a little bit, okay? And I said, no problem. I'll let you think about it. I'll give you a call next week, okay? Again, I was new in my career. I didn't even know to reset the appointment right then. But what almost always happens when we give them time to think about it is it doesn't turn into a sale, which is bad for them and bad for us, okay? 3 weeks after I made that presentation to her, it was 2008, and the stock market crashed. She lost over 40% of her entire assets, and there was no going back. By the time the stock market had come back, Thelma wasn't around anymore, okay? And it's that story, I'm telling this story to the client, but it's that story that always reminds me this fine line I've got to make of not being a pushy guy because nobody likes that, but making sure that there's clarity in the recommendation. So, with your permission, what I'd like to do is I'd like to take a few minutes and just from a couple different angles explain to you once again my recommendation. Is that fair? Okay. So we've covered the warm-up, the fact finder, the evolution, the product presentation. We've covered empathize, isolate objections. We've now hopefully overcome that objection. And the final thing after we've done that is we now have permission to go back in and represent. And it's probably not your full presentation. You're probably pulling out the highlights. You might be pulling out something that they were confused on. If it's annuities, it might be the surrender schedule. If it's med-sups, you might be explaining the difference between Plan G or Plan F. But just explain it again. We've now had a human interaction in this step 7, okay? We've now got permission from them. We've up above here, we've identified and agreed that there's problems that need solutions to. All of these things lead us to sales, okay? But you can't get a no at step 6 and then just keep on blabbing. I mean, a lot of people do, and every once in a while that'll work, but I'm here to tell you the law of averages says that you've got to get permission at each one of these steps before you can go to the next step, okay? If you cannot get a proper warm-up done where they ask you or where they tell you the 3 questions you want to answer, it's probably not time to do the fact finder, okay? If you can't get permission from them to keep talking, it's probably not going to be the right decision for you to just keep talking and keep trying to vomit more information of why they should buy your product. All of these steps have got permission lines, and you got to get past each one of them. I think that these steps right here are steps that most salespeople and most industries forget. They might be really good. They might even have documented and memorized exactly how they do an appointment. Okay? I hope you have done that. But what most people have not done, which will separate you apart from all of your competition, is if you do the same thing, have your stories in mind, and know exactly where you're going on the other 85% of your appointments that don't just say yes after the close. I think it's one of the most valuable teaching lessons I can give you is to document, memorize, and do your sales process. Take what you love of mine, add it to yours, mix it around, but document it, memorize it, and do it 1,000 times. When you do that, you will not believe the change and the success you will have in your conversions. Thanks for being with us today. Please don't forget to hit subscribe, ring the bell, send comments if you've got stuff you want me to answer. I almost always can answer your comments immediately, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you.